And some are saying that the church has been hiding the fact that there is more than one version of the first vision, which is just not true. The facts are we don't study, we don't go back and search what has been said on the subject. For example, Dr. James B. Allen of the BYU in 1970, he produced an article for the church magazines explaining all about the different versions of the first vision.
How long ago was that article?
1970. That was back in 1970. So
been hiding that for a long time.
Yeah. but it's this idea that the church is hiding something, which we would have to say as two apostles who have covered the world and know the history of the church and know the integrity of the first presidency in the corner of the 12 from the beginning of time. There has been no attempt on the part in any way of the church leaders trying to hide anything from anybody. Now we've had the Joseph Smith papers.
No attempt in any way to hide anything from anybody. And isn't it interesting that they suppressed the actual history of nothing other than the 1832 version of the first vision that when Joseph Fielding Smith found it in the 1930s in Joseph Smith's diary, he literally tore the page out of it. And it was only when that was discovered decades later, and the 1832 account that only indicated Jesus showed up to Joseph Smith, not God the Father and Jesus Christ, with them talking to him, but only the Lord, that they were shamed enough to tape it back into the journal and then shared it with one person who then shared it with Gerald and Sandra Tanner, and they asked to see it. And it took them another 6 years after the Tanners published that a Mormon historian had seen it, and they wanted to see it, but the church was not letting them see it. It was that 1970 article by James B. Allen that finally forced the church to start talking about it. Otherwise, if they wouldn't have been shamed into it, we still wouldn't have it. But there's a lot more than just that. What about Joseph Smith overtly lying to Emma, his wife, about polygamy, which included Joseph Smith performing a fake sealing of Emily and Eliza Partridge to Joseph after he had already been sealed to both of them secretly? Or Joseph Smith overtly lying to LDS church membership about his practice of polygamy? How about Joseph Smith calling men on foreign missions so that he could proposition their wives for polygamy? What of Joseph Smith publicly maligning women as whores who denied his polygamous advances? Were we told of Joseph Smith destroying the Nauvoo Expositor because it accurately reported that Joseph Smith was practicing polygamy and lying about it? The Mormon Church continually portraying Joseph Smith as an innocent victim leading up to his death, and knowingly and falsely portraying Joseph Smith as a monogamist in its curriculum for members for over a century. Just a few items of many dozens I can list because I want to keep this short and to the point. What about Mormon apostle Bruce R. McConkie publicly claiming in 1981 that the Adam God doctrine was never, quote, known to have been taught in the church, unquote, only to acknowledge in private to Eugene England in the same year, quote, yes, President Young did teach that Adam was the father of our spirits and all the related things that the cultists ascribe to him, unquote. What about the Mormon Church withholding extensive diaries, journals, and historical records from its members for over a century until the internet forced its hand? What of when Zimbabwe Vice President Mohandi requested support for clean water wells? Mormon apostle Neil Anderson said, quote, we are not a wealthy people, but we are a good people, and we share what we have, unquote. Less than a month later, it was revealed that the Mormon Church has 120 billion plus stockpile of investments through Ensign Peak Advisors, which doesn't count other assets even, such as their real estate holdings. And the annual GDP of Zimbabwe itself is only 31 billion. The Mormon Church has 10 times more, 5 times more than the entire nation of Zimbabwe, but they couldn't help them get clean wells. And this list can be extended extensively. So the idea that even in the process of saying we don't hide anything, and then they turn around and say, after all, we have the Joseph Smith papers. Dan Vogel put together 5 gigantic volumes of early documents of Mormonism that shamed BYU's history department into convincing the church leadership that they really did need to open up and print everything Joseph Smith ever wrote. Private letters, journals, diaries, all kinds of stuff. The revelations, the documents, etc. And they have done a magnificent job, but they only started doing that 10 years ago and had an insider not tipped off the press that the church's vast wealth of plus $120 billion, we would have never known it to this day. The church claims to share $40 million in charities. 1% of 1% or less than their total holdings, when they can generate, because of their incredible investment power, between 6 and 9 billion every quarter of a year. That's every 3 months. And yet they say, well, we're saving it for a rainy day. They gave nothing except maybe another 40 million to the pandemic efforts, so far as we're aware. I'm very happy to be corrected if that is false. But we know they sure didn't give $10 to $20 billion to that effort, which by now they could have easily recovered through their investments. So it is deeply ironic that apostles of truth, in the same breath claiming we don't have anything to hide. Look, in 1970, we discussed all the versions of the first vision, when I had never even heard of all those versions of the first vision until my mission, when an anti-Mormon showed me. Of course, that makes it my fault because I didn't do the research. But the church never said that in any of its manuals at all. I think it's ironic that they love to gaslight us into saying they are totally above board. And yet the history demonstrates time and time again that they've never stopped hiding their history.